And with the completion of Nobara and Sumere's round, Yuji would enter into the arena.
The second opponent to enter into the arena was a boy that had black hair with red highlights in said hair. The boy looked to be close in age to Yuji as well. He also wearing a black jacket with hints of red throughout the sweater. Yuji was noticing that the boy overall had quite a black and red aesthetic to them, which wasn't helped by the fact that they had red eyes as well. As Akari then announced, Yuji versus Riku, now begin. However, once they were announced to start, Riku actually decided to try and talk with Yuji instead, which was rather surprising as two of the opponents so far had been completely silent or barely talked at all other than to reveal their curse technique, and Yasu was kind of a murderous psychopath, but this guy was actually kind of just a normal person, at least from what they could tell. This was because Riku was introducing himself more properly while at the same time wishing Yuji some good luck. And that he hoped that the two of them would have a good match. He had heard some good things about Yuji's physical strength, so he really wanted to push himself and test himself against him. And Yuji decided to return that hospitality to them, hoping that they could be friends after this match. He had to admit he was surprised that someone down here actually seemed to be somewhat normal and not just a psychopath or be a silent assassin type. Though granted, it wasn't like he was the most normal either, considering he was the same person able to punch through literal walls and continue fighting even though his hands got stabbed and he went through a bunch of pain. And he ate fingers. So, yeah, maybe he wasn't that normal either. This is when Toji approached Nagumo because he had a question that he felt he needed to ask her by this point. As Toji asked Nagumo where did she find all these people? After all, Sumire and Riku were both at a grade 1 level despite only being the same age as Yuji and the others, which definitely would have been noticed by the higher-ups. He did understand where they found Yasu, and he also was curious about where they found the Wind Assassin, since the Wind Assassin did seem to be older, but they were still rather strong sorcerer as well. With Nagumo responding, "While you may be the best dad of the Zenin clan, you certainly aren't the best parent when it comes to being a member of the Zenin clan." And not giving any more information than that. However, Toji was very easily able to understand what she meant. Nagumo more than likely found Sumire and Riku when they were young and raised them from scratch. But then that made a second question rise into his head. How did the higher-ups never find out or hunt for these two kids? How did the higher-ups never become aware of them? With Nagumo sighing before saying, have you really been around the higher-ups that much to the point where you have faith in them like that to be able to discover that? And it became clear in Toji's head that in that moment he might have had too many expectations for what the higher-ups were capable of. After all, if there was one word that Toji could use to describe them, it was certainly incompetent. Nagumo then continued, the higher-ups only hunt people down that are of important family or important lineages. A few random kids that displayed the ability to utilize curse energy or see curse energy, not going to hit their radar unless it's some sorcerer out on the road that notices them and is like, maybe you might be able to have some good potential, yoink. So I took them in and gave them an environment to flourish and become much stronger than they would have under Jujutsu High-End Jujutsu Society regulations. Just as I plan to do with other people thrown out by Jujutsu Society due to not being of a specific lineage. And Toji tilted his head for a moment as he thought about something. He didn't realize this until now, but Nagumo and Gojo were actually rather similar in terms of their dreams. Now, of course, they both had different ways they want to accomplish it, but in terms of dreams, they were actually quite similar as people. The only difference was that Gojo had so much power that he could basically do whatever he wanted, and if he really wanted to, he could force the world to be the way he wanted. Nagumo had to play things much more intelligently. She had to be much more careful, because it was still quite a competition to see if she could win or lose. As Toji then returned his focus back to the fight, while beginning to walk back over to Megumi, Yuta, and Nobara. Riku and Yuji both lifted up their arms, their guards raised as they were entering into a combat stance. As sparks and crackles of electricity came off of Riku, however this was not the normal color of electricity, it was red. His hair then began to spike up a little bit as well as he activated his own curse technique. Around Yuji's hands and body, curse energy began to surround him. He was focusing it. It was almost like a blue fire that was surrounding him. Both Riku and Yuji then moved in order to punch each other in the face, their two's fists clashing before they could reach each other's faces. As they clashed fists again and again, the sound of the two's fists clashing echoing throughout the area, as well as the crackling of Riku's lightning. With each of those clashes, some of Riku's lightning was traveling along Yuji's body, causing some small shocks to land. However, even with the pain of those small shocks, it wasn't stopping Yuji. He wasn't even slightly hindered in that pain. Yuji had a mission he was going to keep going, as both Riku and Yuji jumped back from each other. That little clash of fists between each other was a way to test each other and see where they were at physically.
That was when Riku broke the silence by saying,
not bad. In terms of your own physical power alongside your reinforcement, me, you, and Sumire are all on par with each other. But it's really your physical power that makes you an absolute monster. Like, I've never actually fought against someone as physically strong as you, so good job. Though during their clashes, Riku was able to feel something else. He did have one advantage. He was still faster than Yuji. But then Riku saw Yuji pull two things out from his pockets. These were a pair of gloves, the same glove curse tools that Toji had given him to amplify his physical strength even further. As Yuji then punched his fists together, causing a small shockwave to echo throughout the area and break some of the ground. As a small smirk rose on Riku, he was happy that Yuji had more to offer, which means he was going to be able to show even more of his abilities. Riku was fully planning to take Yuji out right here and now. He wasn't going to let this tournament continue. He was going to win. But he was first going to make sure the two of them had an absolutely amazing sparring match. This is when Yuji began his assault, aiming to land a punch right on Riku's chest. However, Riku lifted up both of his arms in order to block it. However, even though he was able to block it, he could feel the physical force behind Yuji's punch, though Riku looked to be a slight bit confused. After all, even though Yuji put on those cursed tools and cursed gloves, those punches felt to be about the same level as what he was doing before. Riku then moved his arms backwards and aimed to land a palm strike right on Yuji's gut. However, as Riku's palm was going towards Yuji's gut, suddenly it was diverted as he felt some slight pain in his arm. A second hit had now landed, Yuji's divergent fist. Yuji took advantage of Riku's surprise to land a punch on Riku's face. And this punch had the expected oomph behind it that he was expecting, even more power than what Yuji was using before thanks to the gloves. Riku realized that Yuji had the ability to delay his own curse energy. This would be rather useful for him to be able to catch him off guard. He also admitted he was surprised. How did he not sense that? Was there something about delayed curse energy that made it significantly harder to sense? But there wasn't much time to focus on that because Yuji was relentless. As the punch to the face was only the first move, with Yuji beginning to release a rapid barrage of punches and putting Riku on the defensive. And while Riku was more than capable of blocking each of the punches, with each punch that Yuji landed, Riku was pushed back a slight bit. However, during one of the punches that was blocked, he felt that it was a little bit weaker this time, which meant that there was going to be another curse energy delay that he had to be prepared for, as Riku then redirected the next punch and used it to elbow Yuji in the face. But he was even more surprised that it didn't trigger yet. It took even longer than it did last time. And even though Yuji did get elbowed in the face, he wasn't going to stop his movements, as he landed a punch on Riku's side. This punch also being at a similar level of power that signified the divergent fist, as both Riku and Yuji jumped away from each other. A soft smirk rose onto Toji as he realized that Yuji had taken his advice, and he was rather proud to see that he had done so. While Toji was no sorcerer, he was efficient at figuring out how to kill them, which meant he would have to learn how each and every single one of them fought. So it was simply a matter of reverse engineering that knowledge and applying it so a sorcerer could improve. That was a true skill that Toji had as a teacher, and it was on display for everybody to see. Yuji then punched the ground, causing a large amount of rubble to surface, before he punched the rubble and sent it flying towards Riku. Riku blinked in surprise as he thought to himself, damn, his strength really is brutish, as he moved out the way, taking advantage of his superior speed in order to spin around the rubble. But that was not the right move, as Yuji closed the distance and prepared to land a kick on Riku's face. A soft smile rose on Riku. He had to admit he was impressed by his combat intelligence, but at the same time he wasn't going to go down that easy. He then attempted to lift up both of his hands in order to block the kick, but before he could fully complete the block, the divergent fist triggered, one landing on his fists and another landing on his side, causing two separate impacts to happen, revealing that not just Yuji could land the divergent fist, but he could land several divergent fists at the same time and choose how long it took to delay the curse energy. As Yuji's kick on Riku's face connected, sending him flying backwards and sending him right towards the edge of the arena. But a moment before Riku could be rang out, Riku's body transmuted into a red lightning bolt that flew towards Yuji at a rather insane speed, before reforming into Riku's body and landing a punch on Yuji's stomach. This punch was a rather hard one as well, since Yuji is skidding backwards a couple feet, with a wide smile rising onto Riku as he had to admit that was rather close, before he decided to explain what his curse technique was. His curse technique allowed him to have red lightning course through his body, as well as to transmute his body into red electricity. He couldn't stay in that permanent red electricity state for long, a max of 10 seconds. Furthermore, while he was in that state, he couldn't do any physical damage towards an opponent. He would have to flicker out of it in order to land blows. He could also generate red electricity passively in order to shock opponents. But now he revealed the details of his curse technique, the red electricity sparking from his body became even more potent than previously. Yuji then realized getting Riku on a ring out was going to be impossible so long as he had that curse technique. The only way that he was going to win was by running Riku out of curse energy or knocking him out. But a small part of him was actually kind of happy about this. Fighting against Riku was rather different than most of the opponents he had to fight against recently. Most of his opponents were fights to the death, people that he couldn't really consider friends or comrades. Whether it was Mahito, Hanami, even Choso back when he fought them before they actually became allies properly in the other two death paintings. Even that transfigured human combination that he fought previously from Mahito as well. But this fight, this battle felt a lot more like when he battled against Todo back in Goodwill. Rather than a battle between two people who were enemies, it was one where a bond was being formed. And it honestly made him feel rather happy about it as well. He wasn't going to go for a ring out, not anymore, as curse energy surrounded Yuji's entire body before it began to flare up a bit. The sparks of competition and focus had entered into Yuji. He was going to make sure that he was going to win. That was his purpose. He needed to get Gojo out from the prison realm. That was the only way he could make up for everything that happened in Shibuya. That was the only way he could make up for Sukuna taking over his body when he did. And now it was all on Yuji's hands. Yuji needed to be able to make up for it by beating Riku and beating the next opponent. As a smirk rose onto Toji, he recognized his focus all too well, and he knew exactly what this meant and what was likely going to follow.
Megumi and Nobara both watched with that same entertained smile. Their faith in Yuji was growing even further, especially because they could tell exactly what was going to happen next. Or at least they had some idea of what was going to happen next, knowing Yuji. And upon seeing that focus and determination enter into Yuji, Riku couldn't help but feel the same. Riku made the first move, now beginning their third round, as his body was transmuted into lightning before he closed the distance and returned back to his normal state, landing a punch on Yuji's face. And while Yuji was being sent backwards, he returned back to lightning before reforming on Yuji's back and kicking him in the center of his back. Or at least that was his plan, but Yuji was able to turn around fast enough in order to block the kick, as he then pulled Riku in and landed a punch on Riku's chest. But once that blow was landed, Riku returned back to lightning and flew over to Yuji's side, landing a punch on Yuji's left side, returning back to the lightning form in order to reform in front of Yuji's face and knee him right in the face. This was a tactic that Riku called Flicker Blitz, where he quickly turned to lightning before turning back to his normal body, appearing around different parts around an opponent to continually land blows. As he returned back to that lightning bolt state before beginning to spin around Yuji, spinning around him like a circle of lightning, trying to make it rather hard for him to predict his next movement and next place he was going to go to. So Yuji decided he had to focus on sensing his curse energy rather than actually trying to follow his movements. He needed to sense when that curse energy signature was about to grow. Once he could do that, he'd be able to predict it and be able to land his own blows to counter. But this was a process that most certainly was going to hurt, as Riku started by shocking Yuji on the stomach, before vanishing and then shocking him on the back. And right when Yuji was about to attempt to land a punch on Riku when he was behind him, he returned back to that lightning state and returned back to normal, punching Yuji in the face. And this went on for a little bit. Riku was able to land tens of blows on Yuji. However, with each of these blows, Yuji was inching closer and closer to being able to predict him properly. Until finally he succeeded in redirecting one of Riku's blows, before redirecting another, and another, until he finally was able to land a punch on Riku's gut. At the same time, Riku landed a punch on Yuji's face, as he had to smirk a slight bit. He was impressed at the fact that Yuji managed to figure it out. He had figured out a way to counter his technique. As Riku thought to himself, and he's doing all of this without a cursed technique. Not bad. He couldn't help but think of the potential this guy had. If he managed to awaken Sukuna's curse technique in the future, what would he be capable of then? How much stronger would he become? He couldn't help but want to see that, especially considering he was able to do this well without a curse technique. As Riku returned to begin his next assault, each time that Riku landed a blow, Yuji was able to land a blow at the same time. Now Yuji was able to perfectly time it out. He was able to figure out when Riku was about to transform by taking advantage of how his curse energy felt right when he returned back to his normal body. But there was something else that Yuji was able to figure out as well. Every time that Yuji landed a blow on him, there was a slight delay from when he turned back to lightning, which gave Yuji an idea, as when Riku landed another punch on Yuji's chest, he didn't actually go for a blow. Instead, Yuji grabbed Riku's shirt, feeling the red sparks of electricity course through his body, but at the same time that didn't stop him, as he used it to slam Riku hard onto the ground. A smirk rose onto Yuji as he told him that he realized what the weakness of his curse technique was. While his ability to turn into lightning was rather useful, he wouldn't be able to do it so long as he was making contact with Yuji. The same went the other way around. That meant that grabs were the perfect thing to battle against him, and no matter how much he shocked him, that wasn't going to stop him from holding onto him tightly. Riku wasn't too sure about that as he began to release a rapid flurry of blows right on Yuji, focusing all of his lightning and electricity right towards his hand, in order to make the blows more focused. But Yuji wasn't going to give up. Instead, he had another move in mind. If Riku wasn't going to surrender willingly, then he was just going to have to knock him out, as cursed energy surrounded Yuji's fist. A feeling overcame everybody in the arena. Yuji was about to land a Black Flash. But a moment before the distance could be made for Yuji to land a Black Flash, the entire base rumbled. This ended up snapping Yuji out of his focus and stopping his fist midway, also resulting in him letting go of Riku. At the same time, Riku deactivated his own curse technique before turning himself to lightning in order to move a little bit away from Yuji, as he wiped some sweat off his head, because he had a feeling if that Black Flash landed, he was probably about to break a couple bones. Or at least he'd have to focus 100% of his curse energy to defend against that. As Nobara, Megumi, Toji, and Yuto were suddenly on guard as they looked around rather confused. Toji looked over to Nagumo for a second just to check if this was her doing. When Nagumo shook her head, she was confused as well, as another rumble echoed throughout the base, before the ground began to shift, several rock hands coming out from the ground, as they all could feel a curse energy and pressure, one that was very familiar to Yuji in particular. Mahito had now arrived, as he very quickly shouted that out to everybody. This was Mahito. Nagumo and Toji were also a little bit confused at those rock hands. This was Chojiro's curse technique. Nagumo could even confirm that this was his curse energy, and everyone was quick to jump out of the arena in order to avoid these rock hands, forced to scatter everybody. Out from the ground, Mahito rose up, but not just Mahito. There were familiar curse energies to other people as well, as they all sensed another curse energy that was familiar to them but that had gone missing. This was Panda's, but it didn't feel like Panda's anymore. It was mutated, changed in shape and form. as they all heard a familiar voice from Mahito say, "I wasn't expecting to see you here, Yuji. You too, Toji. Glad to finally meet you in person. As well as you, Yuta Gotsu. And finally, the head leader of the entire underground, Nagumo. I came here for one thing and one thing alone, and that is to turn every single person here into my next toys. So, let the slaughter and carnage begin." As Mahito began to release the fruits of his labor, several of his transfigured humans that he had made through experiment, the newly transfigured Yasu, and finally his mutated version of Panda, though for now he decided to keep the real reason he was here as a secret. He had one in particular target he was after: the girl who had the ability to extinguish curse techniques. As Mahito's raid on the underground has now begun. Now up next, I do want to spend some time talking about the sponsor to the channel, FanDominion, an old friend of the channel that has a ton of cool anime merch, especially on the JJK side of things, but cool merch overall. And if you're looking for something that looks stylish, something that you can wear out in public and not be called a weeb for, but at the same time be recognized by your friends for wearing something really cool, they have good things in store for you. Or are you looking for something to complete your cosplay with? Well, FanDominion has you covered, and don't worry, they aren't expensive at all. And on top of that, if you use my code both in the description as well as on screen now, you can get a 10% discount. Yep, that's right, a 10% discount. However, now I'm going to spend some time showing off their beautiful catalog. And if you like any of this merch and any of this merch looks awesome to you, remember our code EF10 and you'll be able to get a 10% discount. Anyways, I'm going to see y'all later.